There's no easy way to say this, so I'm just going to make sure that I have a big shit-eating grin on my face as I deliver this news. The Liberals are in free fall. They are in panic mode. They are going to be forced to do something big. Either that's calling an election or proroguing the government. We don't really know what is going to happen, but it's going to be massive because they are getting fact-checked in real time. They are at the peak of unpopularity, as least popular as any sitting government has ever been. And every other party other than the Conservatives is trying to take something from them, trying to get a motion passed, trying to get something before the inevitable collapse of the Liberals. And that just makes me smile. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We are this close from 410,000 subscribers, and it'd be awesome if we got there sooner than later. Without further ado, let's get into this video. So for those that missed it, let's take a look at the polls. You got Pierre Poilievre sitting at 228 projected seats, bottom line on 200, top end of 248. If this stays true to its course, there is nothing that any other party could do, even if all three of them teamed up for a coalition to block anything of the Conservatives. This could be absolutely phenomenal. And then the Liberals, Trudeau is at 53, and he's just heading down and down. I think that the next update, you're going to see them probably go down into the 40s, like 48 or something, and it might even be where the Bloc gets more seats than the Liberals. Like that is just how crazy this is becoming. Then the Bloc's at 42 and NDP is at 18. 99% likely still across the board for the Conservatives of winning the most seats and odds of a majority government. Now let's take a look at just really what happened with the aftermath of this hurricane that just hit Florida.
I understand you heeded the warning and got out of your home, but you did get back there today. Describe for us what you saw and the extent of damage where you are.
I came in on the island. I'm on Fort Myers Beach, which is a barrier island off of the coast, about 60 miles from the eye of the storm. I came in on the north end of the island and drove the 6 miles to my house, and it's just every place just mud and sand, loose debris. I guess you could call it fortunate. There wasn't a lot of stuff to break up. We lost most of it in Hurricane Ian 2 years ago, so there really wasn't a lot to break up and litter the streets with. So it's pretty much just mud and sand left open by all those open spaces between here and there. And I got to my house not quite knowing what to expect, whether I would have water in my house or anything. And there's a picture right there from one of my cams last night, and the water got up to that point. Wow. And then the power went out. So I spent the rest of the night not knowing what was going to happen after that. And I got home today, and fortunately, I found out the water line about a foot from the bottom of my garage door. So I didn't have long to go before it started coming in the house. But I do have some scattered debris. There's somebody's telephone pole is in my backyard. I think it came from a couple blocks up the street, got caught up in the storm and washed across the canal and ended up in my yard.
And talk to us now after not one, but two destructive storms in just 2 weeks, and also deadly, as we know. Tell us your emotions knowing the toll that these storms have taken on so many people.
It's just heartbreaking because, as you can see right now, this is beautiful. Where I am right now, it's a beautiful day. 364 days of the year, generally, it's beautiful. We had a really bad day yesterday, and it turns out we had a really bad day 2 weeks ago, which is unusual. We were talking in the cul-de-sac the other day when we were all getting our stuff pulled out of the houses, getting ready for the storm. Remember how we used to talk about tornadoes or hurricanes from 2004 and 1987? Now we're talking about the hurricane of last week. We just hope this isn't a trend.
I'm assuming you've lived through several hurricanes in your time in Florida. Describe what this one was like compared to other ones that you've been through.
Well, this one for me wasn't horribly, because oddly enough, I got off the island, but I only went 7 miles due south and 2 miles inland. And that was enough to keep it into the point where really it was just a windy night, and there really wasn't much of anything else. And the same thing when Hurricane Ian hit 2 years ago. I was in the same neighborhood, same thing. It really wasn't much of a storm at all. But then I got home to that one and found out we had 7 feet of water in our house, and things were just destroyed. Wow. And then we had the one 2 weeks ago, and I actually stayed here for that one. And it was a rough night of wind and rain, but it was just watching that storm surge coming up. And that's the thing it's so scary because it's just, you see that water creeping up. You just don't know when it's going to stop and when it's going to go away.
Well, Stephen, glad you're okay. Good luck with the cleanup and the assessment of the rest of the damage. Stephen Clark, a Florida resident, thanks for sharing your story with viewers here.
Luckily, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't as bad as what professionals were anticipating or even predicting. I think that at the peak, the worst that it was possibly going to get was as high as 15 feet of water, which would pretty much engulf most single-story, single-family homes, which would have been like super, super devastating. Now, obviously, what has happened is extremely devastating, but I think that there was a lot of damage that was that was missed because of just how quickly the storm was so weird. It got so big so fast, and then it also just completely dissipated kind of quickly as well. Very, very bizarre. Second one within 2 or 3 weeks. And now, if I'm not mistaken, they're calling on another hurricane that's potentially going to hit. It just seems crazy. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then we got to take a look at this clip right here of our radical climate activist minister who's just saying something about the carbon tax that I want to focus on, because the next video is the PBO who kind of debunks what Guilbeault says.
But I think the first paragraph of this report is very clear. More Canadians get more money back than what they pay for carbon pricing.
Mr. Trudeau is also claiming victory today because he's saying he's pulling a different paragraph from the PBO's report, which says that people in the backstop provinces will see a net cost and will pay more in the federal fuel charge and related GST, as well as receiving lower incomes compared to the Canada carbon rebate that they're going to get back. So is there a flaw in this PBO report?
No, you have to look at the entire report. And the entire report says that when you look at direct costs, if you want to look at indirect costs, then you have to look at the cost of climate change. You have to look at the benefits of putting in place carbon pricing and the tens of billions of dollars that are resulting of that. If you want to do indirect, then you have to look at everything. But if you're looking at direct costs, this is what the PBO report says. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
All right. So now, thankfully, we have a clip of the PBO where it's kind of contradicting. He says, look, on one hand, Liberals are correct, and on the other, the Conservatives are also correct. It just depends on what angle you kind of take. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are about this as this interview, this clip of the interview kind of unveils itself.
So it's very difficult to determine the impact of climate change on a longer period.
And finally, I think a lot of Canadians will be looking to you and this analysis because your name has been invoked so frequently in political debate over the carbon tax. My conclusions that I draw from what you have determined is that, when the government says you get more than you pay in, if they're referencing the fiscal analysis, then they are correct. When the Conservatives say it makes you worse off overall, and if they were specifically referenced, if each side specifically referenced analysis, that if they were talking about the economic impact, including plus the fiscal impact, then they would be right too. Like everybody can actually, two things can be true at once, it seems.
And that's a very good summary of the report. If you look only at the fiscal impact, yes, that's true, that people are better off. But if you look at the global impact, not only the fiscal, money in, money out, but the economic impact that will be felt because of the fuel charge, then that's true that the average household is worse off.
And just before I let you go, there was some, I guess, suggestion that this was not just a mistake or a misunderstanding. Like, can you be clear with people watching? Like, why did you include the industrial policy in the first place?
It was an oversight. We really meant to have just the fuel charge, but the mechanical and the modeling is so complex. In fact, it involved several models on top of each other, feeding into each other, that the output-based pricing system, the industrial part, was included when it shouldn't have been included.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note, Mr. Giroux. Appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
So there you go. The PBO himself says that both parties are right. It just depends on which angle you take a look at it. And I just find that so hard to believe. Like, we all see how much the carbon tax costs, right? How much you pay for it on gas. Like here in British Columbia, the Conservative Premier candidate John Rustad has said that he's going to just not comply with the federal government, and all of our gas will be exempt from the carbon tax. So he said out of his own mouth, if I'm not mistaken, that'll reduce the price of gas by about 30, 32, maybe even 35 cents, because it's a percentage of how much the gas actually costs at the time. If the price of gas goes up, then that percentage, even though it stays fixed, it's a bigger piece of the pie. And so that'd be huge savings on gas. But you tack on 30 cents a liter times 100 liters a few times a month, whatever it is. That's just for gas. That's not the carbon tax you're paying on your food and your home heating. And I just don't see how 8 out of 10 Canadians get more from the carbon tax than what they put in. And I've done polls on this channel where I've asked that exact same thing, and it's the opposite result. It's 8 out of 10 Canadians don't get more. 8 out of 10 Canadians are spending more on the carbon tax than what they are getting in. But let's just try and solve it once and for all right now while we're talking about it, and put down in the comments. I don't know if this will generate like hundreds of people replying to this, but put down in the comments if you get more out of the carbon tax than what you put in, or if you're spending more on the carbon tax than what you are getting. Let's just settle it right here and there. And then you've got some Liberal MPs that are testifying on behalf of foreign interference. This is kind of been just swept under the rug a little bit, foreign election interference, but let's take a quick look at this.
A couple of high-profile politicians will be on the hot seat today at the federal inquiry into foreign interference. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is slated to testify, along with former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. The latest hearings are focusing on the ability of agencies to detect and counter foreign meddling. A final report is expected by the end of the year. CTV's Jeremy Sharon joins us now with more. So, Jeremy, good morning to you. Talk to us about what we are expecting to hear today from Joly and Mendicino and why they're there.
Yeah, Marcia, look, as you mentioned, this second phase of the inquiry is looking at procedures, protocols, the federal government's ability to identify and counter attempts at foreign interference. The first phase was looking at identifying potential foreign interference in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. Now the inquiry is looking at whether or not the government is well equipped to identify these threats and counter them. That's why we're going to hear today from former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, who was in the role between 2021 and 2023. We'll be able to provide some insight as to what kind of protocols are in place, what happened in those 2 years following the 2021 election, where it is alleged that there were certain aspects of foreign interference, and what kind of protocols are in place. In terms of Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, she will be able to speak to what is happening right now in her role, and to a certain extent will be able to provide some insight, because of course much of these conversations can't be had in public. That is a big challenge that the inquiry has faced. But these two who are speaking today will specifically be able to provide insight as to what is happening now and whether or not the federal government is doing enough, and whether or not things need to change to prevent this from happening in the future, Marcia.
Okay, Jeremy, I know you're going to be walking.
This seems so ridiculous that they are even discussing this without first releasing the names of the 11 MPs that are pretty much treasonous here in Canada. And I do not think that we can actually have an election without knowing who the names of those 11 MPs are, unless they are being fizzled out right in front of our eyes, and they won't be on ballots, and they won't be able to run in upcoming elections. But even if that's the case, what the hell are they even doing still in Parliament? This government is so corrupt. They are protecting themselves. You've got criminal activities with money laundering, $400+ million in green slush funds currently still on the table, still under investigation by the RCMP. Then you've got this, the foreign election interference stuff. Like, I just don't know what the hell's happened to Canada. It makes me feel like we're living in some grungy freaking third world country when you see stuff like this. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts down below. And then you got Pierre Poilievre, who came out the gate with a really tough stance on terrorists. Like, he is anti-terrorism at the highest level, which is a breath of fresh air considering Justin Trudeau is, I don't want to say pro-terrorism or pro-terrorist, but kind of, he panders to terrorists and he doesn't impose sanctions on them. He doesn't go after them the way he should. He just kind of lets it be, right? Like, I don't understand that mentality, right? It's hard to believe that that's even like a topic of discussion in Canada, but here's what Pierre has to say about it nonetheless.
I pointed out the other day Samadoun, which held these horrific protests where they were calling for death to Israel, death to America, death to Canada. They burned our flag. These monsters are a front for another terrorist group in the Middle East that has been banned for 20 years. The Americans, the Europeans and other countries have tackled this terrorist group, but why in Canada does Justin Trudeau continue to pander to these terrorist supporters by allowing them to operate legally, even when they have violated our anti-terrorism laws? Another example, of course, is the Houthis. The Houthis have been operating on our country, even though they can operate in our country. We don't know for sure if they have because we don't have laws to stop or even surveil it. But the Houthis are a front for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, an organization that is the biggest and most well-organized terrorist group in the world, which supports Hamas and Hezbollah. This organization murdered 55 Canadian citizens by shooting a missile at a civilian aircraft over Iran, blowing it out of the sky 4 years ago. And yet Trudeau allowed them to stay legal, raising money and terrorizing our people for years after that. Now, a related front group, the Houthis, continues to fire missiles at civilians, attack merchant ships that carry critical civilian and humanitarian aid, killing civilian workers on those ships. The Americans banned the Houthis back in January. The Liberals at the time said they were thinking about it. What is there to think about? Since October 7th, the terrorist attacks, Houthi terrorists have disregarded international law. They carry out attacks in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. According to the American Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, since November 2023, the Houthis have launched unprecedented attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, as well as military forces positioned in the area to defend the safety and security of commercial shipping. These attacks against international shipping have endangered mariners, disrupted the free flow of commerce, and interfered with the navigational rights and freedoms. Earlier this month, a Houthi spokesman celebrated the attacks they had done and said they've targeted 193 ships linked to the Israeli, American, and British enemy. They've also launched hundreds of missiles at innocent Israeli civilians to support Hamas. The Houthis operate with the support of the criminal regime in Tehran who helped organize the October 7th attack. The murderous Iranian regime uses groups like Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas to spread violence and terror throughout the world. That's why the Americans have designated them as a terrorist group, and they have called on others to do the same. Jewish Canadians and all Canadians deserve to feel safe. They deserve to know that they will not be targeted by terrorist groups that operate here, launder money here, finance organized crime here, and foment hatred here. And for these reasons, common sense conservatives are calling on the NDP Liberal government to list the Houthis as a terror group under Section 83.05 of the anti-terrorism law. That will allow our law enforcement the power to seize their bank accounts, shut down their operations, criminalize recruitment, logistics, and planning on Canadian soil to keep our people safe.
Wow, there you go. That's something that you would never hear Justin Trudeau say. Justin Trudeau has allowed terrorists to seek refuge here in Canada. Like, it's getting insane. You got people in the streets of Vancouver a few nights ago that were calling for the death of Jews or of Israel, the death of Canada. which means Canadians, the death of America, which would mean the death of Americans. And that all happened in front of the police. The government is aware of it, and nothing has happened. I don't think that Canada is headed in the right direction under this Liberal government, and I'm not the only one. I think that the majority of us, what we were called at once upon a time was the small fringe minority. I just don't think that that's a thing anymore. I think that this is now a majority movement. As we're seeing in the polls, people are fed up with Justin Trudeau. That doesn't only end with individual people, that also extends to other politicians, not only Liberals that are leaving and have lost confidence, but also NDP members. Now we're going to take a look at a power play panel here with Vashi, who talks about how the NDP is just about to turn on Justin Trudeau. Let's take a look.
Parliament remains gridlocked at this hour with government business on hold for days now as the opposition demands the release of unredacted documents related to a now defunct green tech fund that the Auditor General found was mired in conflict of interest issues. And the Liberals refused to comply, citing the protection of charter rights. The Liberals need at least one opposition party to play ball with them to end the filibuster debate and resume work in the House. And this, of course, is all playing out as the Liberals stare down the barrel of a tight Bloc Québécois deadline to meet demands like boosting old age security that so far the feds are not supporting. Their only other potential dance partner is the NDP, who have yet to put any demands, as you heard from Mr. Singh, on the table.
Have you asked for anything from the Liberals to say that you'll give them their support going forward if they meet some new demands, so that way they don't have to rely on the Bloc Québécois?
No.
Haven't asked for anything from them.
The ongoing discussions with the House Leader, that is normal, but there's been no discussion between me and the Prime Minister. There's been nothing I've been putting on the table, nor has the Prime Minister put on the table. I've said very clearly, we're not looking for a new deal. We tore up the agreement. There will be no new deal. We're not negotiating a new deal. There is nothing of that nature.
Help me understand. Mr. Singh was just saying, I haven't put anything specific on the table. Let's separate the issues, the first being sort of the paralysis in the House right now. If the Liberals wanted to force closure on the debate that's happening right now, they would need another party to help them. Is the NDP entertaining discussions on that?
Well, I don't know what the discussions have been between the House leaders at all. I do know that there are ways out of this, but they require a little bit of maturity, I think, on the part of both the government and the opposition, the official opposition. I think that what's happening in the House right now is shameful, it's wasteful, it's a misuse of taxpayers' dollars, and I'm surprised that the Conservatives are actually doing what they're doing, because they're supposed to be the ones that are the big guardians of the public purse. And so, you know, and it's to no avail. It's not like they're getting anywhere with any of it. And the Liberals have these motions that were passed that are demanding the disclosure of documents, and they could do something about that. They could find a way to disclose the documents. So I personally think that the onus is on the government and the opposition to actually come to some kind of an agreement or something to actually move this forward. I can't imagine that either party wants this to, certainly the Liberals don't, but I don't know why the Conservatives would want to either. I think some of their supporters might be looking at this and wondering what the heck is going on.
I think, like, from what I can see, both parties are fairly dug in their position, and they're very different. The Conservatives are saying you're holding stuff back because you want to conceal what's in those documents. The Liberals are saying it would be a breach of charter rights if we did hand them over and set a precedent that we essentially don't want to set. And I think because of that impasse is why I direct the question at the NDP. Do I garner from your response that your party doesn't intend to wade in one way or the other?
We've been saying quite clearly that this is an abuse. This is childish. This is like playing in a sandbox. It's children playing in a sandbox. The Conservatives should stop this filibuster, this absolute paralysis that's set in, and the Liberals should comply with the motions that have been passed in the House of Commons. I think that that's pretty clear. And this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, it's accelerated to a particular point right now. But in the past, there have been situations like this, whether it was around We Charity or or foreign interference or any number of other things. I think that there is a tendency to withhold on the part of the Liberal government, and there is a tendency on the part of the Conservatives to be very dramatic and kind of flamboyant and a bit histrionic, in my view, in the way that they deal with that.
Just to be clear, though, if the Liberals want the NDP's help to force closure without handing over those documents, is the NDP prepared to talk about that, or is that ruled out?
I don't think this is an area where, we're definitely not involved in any negotiations. I think that.
No, so the funniest part about this is that in a interview that Jagmeet Singh did either yesterday or the day prior, in a recent interview, Jagmeet had said, Justin, it's time that we just move on and open up Parliament again. Just go ahead and show the documents. He encouraged Justin Trudeau to submit the unredacted documents to the RCMP. So this is the state of the NDP. The NDP, they're selfish. They just want a couple of things. They want to get a couple of things so that they can put a staple on it and say, look, we've done this for you guys, the supporters of the NDP. We're fighting for Canadians. Please, please, please vote for us. We want more than 18 seats, right? But everyone knows. I almost said the reality is. I freaking hate when people say that, man. That's such a liberal way of saying it. I'm like, every time I hear it, it's like, no, stop saying that. That's what they say in the House of Commons. The reality is, shit. I'm stuck with it. Jagmeet Singh knows he's not going to be prime minister. He knows that he's not going to win. So he's trying to get a couple things passed so he can farm some more votes. Because as we just saw in terms of how many seats are in the House, it's quite likely. It's actually extremely likely that the Bloc might get more seats than the Liberals. Now that doesn't mean that they have that they have more voting across Canada, because the Bloc is obviously only for the Bloc. Like, you can't vote for the Bloc outside of Quebec, nor why would you? But more seats than the Liberals, then if they just keep dropping and keep dropping, it's almost like when there's a sell limit in a stock, right? So if a stock is at $105 and there's a sell order at 100, right? And it's like a multi-billion, hundreds of billions of dollars, and then it drops below 100 or 200, and you're just going to start to see everyone selling. It's when you just lose confidence in something in its entirety, and that's kind of where the Liberals are going if they haven't already even reached that point. It seems like there could be a strong argument to make that they've already reached that point where everybody is jumping ship. They've already lost a significant amount of by-elections. The NDPs have scooped up one at least seat. The Bloc has taken it from the Liberals. The Conservatives took it from St. Paul. Like, it's just going to keep happening over and over. And a lot of these MPs that we see in the House of Commons, the Liberals, they're not even going to win their own riding. Karina Gould is likely not to win her own riding. You have Chrystia Freeland, who's likely not to win her own riding. And they're going to be, spouting that, it's conservative mis and disinformation, and, it's Russian propaganda. And that's just not true. Then that's not true at all. People are fed up with being taxed. Hello? People don't want to be taxed. Wake up, Liberals. People are sick and tired of being taxed. I've said this from 2.5 years ago. When it comes time to vote, people are going to be reaching into their pockets. People are going to be looking at their bank accounts, and they're going to pull up the numbers and go, shit, I can't possibly support these people. They're freaking taxing us to death. Literally, one of the best ways to get reelected or elected or to get votes is to say, we're going to stop taxing you at the current tax rate. We're going to get rid of the carbon tax. We're not going to allow the carbon tax to happen to you. We're going to get rid of all that crazy tax. In fact, we're going to reduce taxes for personal tax and business taxes. That's the best way to freaking get more votes right now. Like, it's insane. And the NDP are going, we should probably tax a little bit more. But the real problem is that it's the grocery store CEOs, man. They're the real lobbyists. How dare they? And the Liberals are so delusional that they think that they're just going to fix the world's climate by taxing Canadians. Not taxing America, taxing Canadians. Not taxing China, but taxing Canadians. Our 1.5% global carbon footprint, but we're paid 100% of the tax. It doesn't make any freaking sense. These people have lost their mind. And look, that's not to say that switching to electric, switching to getting off of fossil fuels, that's not good. Even Elon Musk, who's like the guy for electric vehicles, he's even said Yeah, no, I sell electric vehicles. I love electric. I would like to see the future more electric. I think it would be good. But also, we can't just switch everything to electric right away. We don't have the infrastructure to support that. So they're trying to price us out of home heating, right? They're trying to price us out of our own vehicles, trucks, and cars and SUVs. They're trying to price us out of that by having this carbon tax, by having all these stupid taxes to the point where we just cave in and give in to their demands. And if we just hold off a little bit longer, none of these liberals are going to win their ridings again. And I think that in the next poll update in the coming days, you're going to see it go from 53 down to 48 or 47. And it's just going to keep dropping to the point where I guarantee you at the next update for the polls, it's going to be massive outrage. If they do actually drop below 50 projected seats and they drop into the 40s, CTV, CBC, Global News, every mainstream media out there is going to be saying, that's it, the liberals are done. And I guess at that point, you might see an It's Over video. And speaking of It's Over, this video is absolutely over. I hope you enjoyed it. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.